Go.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. My name is Cheryl Toth. I'm the host moderator of today's webinar, and this is our series called Sacred Places and Spaces, and today our topic's greening our churches. We want to begin by thinking about the sacred space on which we meet, and for all of us to consider the sacred lands and the peoples who have peopled them from the beginning of our time. Here in Regina, from which I'm speaking, we are on Treaty 4 land, and it is the homeland, traditional homeland and gathering place of the Nahiawak, Assiniboine, Saulteaux, and Métis nations. And we make this acknowledgement out of deep respect for the ceremonies, traditions, and Indigenous peoples who've lived on this land, and in our awareness that we are called, we are all relations of one another, we are all treaty people, and we seek truth and reconciliation. As I said, my name's Cheryl Toth. Our speaker today is Noman Levesque, and I'm going to say a little bit about him, and then we will have our opening prayer and get right into it. So, Noman is animator of Creation Care Ministry in the Diocese of St-Jean-Longueuil outside of Montreal. He's the founder of the Green Churches Network and served as its executive director from 2009 to 2018. He has also been associate director of the Canadian Centre for Ecumenism, sessional lecturer at the Institut du pastorale des Dominicains, and assistant to the general secretary of the Assemblée des évêques catholiques du Québec. He's the author of several books, including Greening Your Church, which happens to be the topic of the day. And so not only can you listen to him, there's probably a book you will be able to, you could get to follow up on it. So with today's topic, Greening Your Church, Noman will explore the various ways our facilities and grounds can reduce their impact on God's beautiful creation. So we take a moment to gather ourselves in prayer and give thanks to God before we hear from Christine. And Christine, by the way, our prayer of the day is a member of our Ecumenical Stewardship Planning Group and a member of Emmanuel Anglican Church here in Regina. Christine.
Thank you. Let us pray. God of hope, Dieu de notre espoir, we give thanks for the blessings of life and for the opportunity to gather together virtually in a space of peace and learning. We are mindful of the great privilege this is, as peace is only a dream in many parts of the world, remembering all places experiencing conflict, and especially your people in Afghanistan, Syria, South Sudan, and most recently, Ukraine. We are grateful. Nous sommes reconnaissants pour la présence de Noman Levesque aujourd'hui. Open our hearts and our minds to hear you in his voice, your gifts of new and creative ways of seeing, being, and doing, that our churches may tread softly on your creation. We ask this in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. Nous te prions au nom de notre Seigneur Jésus-Christ, who was with you at the beginning, to love us into being. Amen.
Thank you, Christine.
I can't
Thank
do
you,
this without
Christine.
talking to him.
And if you would, Norma, if you would take over.
Yes, hi. I was quite touched, Christine, to hear a bit of French. Thank you. My last name is Lévesque, which resonates in a certain amount of French there. My mother spoke to me in English when I was young. My great-grandmother immigrated from close to Manchester, England, and came first to Toronto, and then they moved to Montreal. And so that's where I get my English. Not very British, though. It's very Canadian English, very Montreal English. But my day-to-day, my wife, my friends, I speak French. And thanks for building that bridge. I'd like to first acknowledge the land I'm speaking from. So Montreal doesn't have a simple story when it comes to land acknowledgement. Jacques Cartier first met the Iroquois of the St. Lawrence, we call them, a town called Hochelaga, which just disappeared, and the presence of the Iroquois of the St. Lawrence just was not there afterwards. Probably some wars or conflicts with other nations. So when the French came and started settling, they thought they were settling on void land. Then the Mohawk quickly said, well, this is part of our land too. And also informed the French that had settled that this place had been from time immemorial a meeting place. At a certain pace, every few years, there would be a huge competition of what we call lacrosse, which is the ancestor of ice hockey. And it was played here on the island of Montreal, and it was a meeting place and a place for alliances, a place for gathering. And well, as time went on after French settlement, there was also English settlement and lots of other people from all around the world who gather. And we would like to consider that Montreal remains a place of gathering, a place of a meeting place for different peoples. And we want to keep on honoring that and keep on building and renewing and reconciling with the people with who we share this land. Today, I'm going to talk about the green churches. I shall share my screen. Here we go. It's a little workshop. I'll give you all the chance to speak a bit from time to time. And this will be quite exciting to hear you. It was a beautiful presentation. Thank you very much, Cheryl. The one thing that was not said, which is more recent, is that I'm a member of a working group for the Laudato Si action plan with the Vatican. So I volunteer at the parish level, at the diocesan level, and also with the Vatican. So what's my day job? I work at the Meteorological Service of Canada in communications. So kind of like Batman, you know, with his day job and his night job. Well, my night job or my volunteering is in the church with this. My book is right here, Greening Your Church. It's 100 pages. Half of it is easy theology. The other half are examples of what can be done in a local church. The pandemic gave me the chance to build a course because I had given courses at the Institut, Pastoral Institute of the Dominicans in Montreal. And so I gave some courses, but faculties of theology or the Institut Pastorale des Dominicains, they just weren't interested in building these online courses I was offering, but they weren't interested, which I thought was a pity because people who are not close to city centers didn't have access to that. And so the pandemic, with all the closures around, I thought, well, I'm going to film these courses online. So there are 2 free courses. One is about Laudato Si, the other one about greening your church in 10 steps. And I also made 3 full courses, which are 10 hours each. And this can be done at your own pace. And you just log in, you decide to do a few hours here and there, and then you finish the course. There's no exam. So it's called Creation Care School, if ever you're interested. So what am I going to talk about? The Green Churches Network. What is this network? And the different tools that are offered for three main pillars: spirituality, awareness, and action. Now, for our organization, yes.
Norma, this is Cheryl. I don't mean to interrupt you, but if
No, go
you're
ahead.
changing slides, we don't see them.
You don't?
No, we're only seeing the very first one.
Oh, that's a pity.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for telling me.
You're welcome.
I had expectations. Okay, I'll try something else. Just give me a moment.
And while you're doing that, I'll let people know that we'll make sure that in the chat or subsequently they'll be able to get the link to the courses that you're talking about, because I know some people are
wonderful.
going to want to be able to follow up on that.
Okay. Make this bigger. Do you see a map?
Yes.
Okay, great. We'll do it like this. Try like
Okay.
this. Maybe it'll respond better. I like to say that technology is great when it's our slave and we are not slaves to technology. Okay, so here's the ambition from coast to coast to coast to have different faith communities, Christian faith communities that become members of the Green Churches Network. We're up to 95 already. And historically, it just started in 2006 in Montreal and has just went out geographically. The closest to you is in Red Deer. There's a United Church in Red Deer installing solar panels these days. And well, probably when the snow melts, very soon. And they joined the Green Churches Network. There's one in Kelowna, BC, and there's another one in Sault Ste. Marie in Ontario. When I give presentations, I'd always tell, which ones are closest to you. Well, there are none in Saskatchewan yet. So I'll be transparent. I am hoping that some of you might join. Every church that joins gets a page with a short description of what they're doing. Some of them are very good with the spirituality of creation, give retreats. Other ones will be good in the action, actually doing stuff, installing solar panels or geothermal, or the smaller stuff, like just making sure that there are recycling bins in every room, even the rooms that are rented. There's a website. It's like a mini governmental website because it has 120 pages, French and English. So 120 of each. And so lots and lots of tools, lots of resources that are on that website. And obviously when you join, you just be part of something much bigger and you can network with the other churches. Also, two ways to be informed. There's a newsletter. It's a monthly newsletter. You can know which new resources are available. And also the Facebook page. You can like that page and see the different news coming in. How do people register? There are 3 steps. First is to assemble the green team. Why? Well, in the first years, we didn't ask churches to have a green team. There was just one representative. But what happens? That person moves and goes out of that group or that parish, or that person becomes sick or even dies. I've been witness to that. So obviously, if there's a green team, well, the project continues, and it shows that there's a sense of community. That's step number 1: assemble a green team. Second one: write a short article. So what's happening at that church? What has been done? What will be done? And step number 3 is fill in a form. That way we have all the proper information and you're part of the Green Churches Network. We recommend $100 per year, but obviously finances with different churches are not the same. So that's why it's recommended. And if ever someone wants to join for $10, that's fine too. Once registered, the first year, the church receives an indoor plaque. It says the name of the church and says proudly, we are part of the Green Churches Network. And the second year, receive an outdoor sign. The outdoor sign is so popular. I think it's because the logo is well appreciated and it's nice, but that can be just put on the wall that way. And so now, time to talk about the three pillars. In French, when I was being trained as a teacher, we would talk about savoir, savoir-faire, savoir-être. So there's knowledge, there's the know-how, and then the know-how to be. The first one, knowledge, goes with education. So what do we know about the environment, our surroundings? And so Christian communities are great because we're gathering people and we do share knowledge all the time. So we can actually say, okay, let's watch a movie together about environment awareness and have a discussion afterwards. Let's invite experts and have a workshop. So that's education. That's what we're doing right now. Then the know-how is the action. Doing things. This is the part, action, where we can calculate how we've lightened the environmental footprint of our community. And I knew a pastor who would say, my objective is not only to reduce the impact of the church as it functions, but that all the members of the congregation, when they go back home, they're also influenced by that, and they also lighten their environmental footprint. And then there's the know how to be, so values and our spirituality. And it's funny because, I've been doing this since 2005, actually. And it's amazing how people want to jump into the action right away. It's like, okay, I got it. I want to do stuff. But the people in the green team might understand why, but not the whole congregation. And then when there's lots of motivation from the green team, but not lots of acceptance from the rest of the congregation, well, it creates lots of tension. So to bring in the spirituality of creation, eco-spirituality, eco-theology, making sure that it's part of the message we hear on some Sundays. It's part of faith education. Making sure that it's part. Otherwise, it's just like this block that's outside that's being forced inside the church. Environmentalism. By the way, many times I've received that criticism. Oh, you're trying to force environmentalism with all the political and social prejudice it might bring with it. You're trying to force it on the church. And my response was, no, I'm noticing that there is an environmental crisis. The river levels are going down. There have been floods that are not normal. There is environmental damage all around. I want to find out what's the Christian response to the environmental crisis. And how do we start formulating that response? Well, it's with spirituality. It's with the Bible, stories of the saints, our rituals that we already have. So let's jump into that. I'm going to go into spirituality of creation. This picture was taken on September 1st, even before Season of Creation was accepted more broadly. It was an initiative from a church. They made a nice setting there. So on the website, we have a certain number of prayers, lots of them actually. I think it's 20 short prayers and 20 long prayers. So whenever you have meetings, you can go in there and or publications, you want to see them, and they're from very, very different sources. Stories from the Bible. So on the website again, you can find like top 15 stories that talk about environment, and then 5 hymns. And so it's separated like that. And before I get to that, actually, I'll try to, can I back up? Yes, I can. I think I'll back up some more. There you go. Okay, so just spontaneously, maybe 3 or 5, I'd like to hear from you. You can simply raise your hand and then unmute. Which stories of the Bible or Bible quotes have already brought you some motivation to care for God's creation?
I would say that God has, when God created in the beginning, and it was good, and so to rejoice and ensure that it continues to be good.
Right, right. It's not just order. It's also, it's good, it's good, it's good. And when God saw everything he had made, thought it was very good. Yeah. Thank you. Amanda.
There are a number of places in the Psalms that celebrate the goodness of creation. I'm thinking of the one that begins, "The earth is the Lord's and everything in it, the world and those who live in it," that draws our attention to the ways that people before us celebrated the goodness of creation. And we've inherited that, and we have a responsibility to keep on passing it on in good shape to the next generations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and talk about the Psalms. I fell on an article recently that was a research paper that went through the themes that were in the songs we hear at church and the Psalms in the Bible, and those themes did not correspond. We are missing a lot of social justice and even environmental themes that we should hear more in the songs at church. Thought that was interesting. There's another hand up. Teresa.
I agree with this. Whoever spoke about the Psalms, Psalm 29, I jotted down, "For God's voice is heard on the waters, thundering on many waters. The voice of God is powerful." And Psalm 47, "For your realm is all the earth."
Your realm is all the earth. Does that mean we decide? Hey, all of these were given to us so we could just spoil them as we want? No, we're actually not the, it doesn't belong to us. It's his realm. It belongs to God.
And in the chat, Debbie said, she doesn't have a microphone, the passage about the lilies of the field and the smallest sparrow and how they are treasured by God.
Right. And that's actually an ode to simplicity, that one. So it, Jesus says, okay, you're worried, look at nature. How does nature work? And then just live a simple life and you'll have everything you need. And search the kingdom and the justice of God. Well, I think that's good. We'll continue. I'll show you a few of my favorites. Like I'd see these are the basic ones. In Genesis 1:31, so it's the end. And God saw everything that he had made, and indeed it was very good. In Jeremiah, so there are 3 prophets who actually say something about environmental degradation. They don't talk about it at length, but they did notice that there's environmental degradation. So in each case, they say there is environmental degradation, and it's because of human sin, and we should repent and turn back to God. This is Jeremiah. It's one of the examples. "You defiled my land and made my heritage an abomination." Psalm 145. You open your hand, satisfying the desires of every living thing. So God provides. And in today's society, we're very much in this mindset of I work, I get a salary, I get to buy whatever I want. It's my efforts, that give me everything. We've totally evacuated God from this equation. So remembering that God provides is that, no, I don't get everything just by my own efforts. God provides. That's the use of the blessing before a meal. At the end of Mark, we hear this, the gospel according to Mark. Jesus said to them, "Go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature." Now, this one you can put an asterisk right next to it. I put King James Version right there. Okay. King James Version, why? Because it was closer to the Vulgate, so to the Latin Bible, which was obviously translated from the Greek. So other translations try to understand the context and everything and don't put creature, they'll put creation. And I've even seen mankind, which doesn't mean the same thing. Now, St. Francis of Assisi was actually inspired by this passage because it said creatures, or every creature or creatures. And so just be careful of which translation it's from. And this phenomenon I've only seen in English Bibles. On the French side, I've always seen creature. For me, that was just a given. But when I started looking in different translations in English, it didn't say the same thing. The end of Matthew's Bible, Matthew's Gospel, it says, "Go preach the gospel to every nation." That's the one we hear most often. But here it says every creature. It's interesting to know, too, that at the beginning of the Gospel, according to Mark, Jesus, once he's baptized in the Jordan River, the Spirit pushes him in the wilderness, and he stays there with the beasts for 40 days. So the Gospel of Mark has this little environmental inspiration at the beginning and at the end that, creation is part of this whole renewal. That God is renewing not just humanity, but the whole creation. And in Genesis, this is like the main one. Genesis 2:15. The Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to till it and keep it. Two verbs there, till it and keep it. So to till means that you're going to cut down trees, you're going to move the soil, you're going to displace things. And to keep it means that, well, you'll try not to do too much damage so you can continue on. So if you're going to keep it, you want it to stay sustainable. And if you're going to till it, you're going to develop. So Genesis 2:15 is, or should be, the inspiration for sustainable development. We've had that in the Bible since way before the expression sustainable development was developed, but it's right there. There. The saints. So I'm from a Catholic background. So obviously there is one side of the saints where we always look at them to like pray and intercession and all of that. But the first step is actually to look at them as models. And that I think is good ecumenically. We can be much inspired through all these models of faith, these saints from that point of view. On the website, there's an interesting list of them. And I've also included some that don't go through a process of canonization in their church. So they don't necessarily have the label saint, but they are. So here's just a few. Blasius of Sebastos. He was a bishop who was so interesting that the animals would gather when he was preaching. I know for a fact there are some of you who are pastors, ministers, so that's a great invitation. That's a challenge for you. Also, that saint could also heal people and animals. Francis of Assisi. I don't think I really have to explain his role in all this, but he was not the first to call the animals brothers and sisters. Other saints had done that. Hildegard von Bingen was a few years before him, and she had an amazing relationship with nature. And yeah, so lots of them, there are lots of stories of saints where they wind up in a cave, and then they befriend a bear and call them brother. So Francis of Assisi wasn't even that original. It's just how radical he was in everything he did that shocked us. He since 1979, he's the patron saint of ecology in the Catholic Church, and I'm guessing a few churches followed after that. Kateri Tekakwitha, her remains are just a few kilometers from my house. She obviously was brought up with native spirituality, with a very important connection to nature. And then when she heard the missionaries talking about Jesus, she understood it also from her native perspective. For her, it was kind of a dialogue between the two. They weren't opposites. It's interesting to know that the natives will believe in different animal spirits. There are spirits in nature, but there's only one creator God, Kije Manitou. So monotheism was not a problem at all. And so one thing I find really interesting in her biography is that she loved to hear about Jesus. She loved to pray. She thought Mass was beautiful, but she felt so cramped up in those little chapels. For her, praying made no sense between four walls. Praying was done in creation, to be in contact with creation, to be closer to the Creator. So let's say Mass for her did not finish in the chapel. She had to go outside near a stream and then finish her prayers there. I added John Moore here because he was the son of a Presbyterian minister, if I remember correctly. And when you read his writings, they're very inspiring when it comes to looking at creation, God's creation. It was also in a period where we wanted to conserve rather than just develop and destroy everything. Today, I think we would talk about a respectful development, but still, he was the foundation of Yosemite National Park was made thanks to his faith, recognizing it as God's creation. There. The Green Church's website has a list of books you might be interested in. And also some church statements from different churches. And it's just amazing to see how the same message is just echoed, but out of different mouths or different people meeting. Obviously, the encyclical Laudato Si made a huge difference in the Catholic world. I know because I've been doing this since 2005. And straight out, I'll tell you, I was considered a heretic when I started. When I went to my bishop and I said, I'd like to be called Creation Care Minister for this diocese, he laughed. And he said, taking care of ecology is good, but it's not part of the church's mission. What does the church do? Well, the church takes care of the poor, takes care of those who are marginalized, and we do faith education. But the environment is not part of our tradition. I went to see Bible scholars and told them, what does the Bible say about the environment? They told me nothing. The Bible doesn't say anything about the environment. So we've come from very far in just 10 years, 15 years. The encyclical kind of encapsulates everything. Now, I don't know how to tell you this humbly, but the Pope actually copied part of my book in the encyclical. The paragraph number 67 has a paragraph practically written the same way as in my book, page number 25. I went to see, he's Cardinal now, Bishop Michael Cherney, who's Canadian, by the way, and he was the one heading the commission writing Laudato Si. I published my book, talking about this one, by the way. I published my book in 2014, and I sent it to the popes. And then it circulated, and Michael Cherney thought, oh yeah, I saw your book. I almost invited you to be part of the commission. But for sure, your book was an inspiration, especially for chapter 2 in the encyclical. So I say this very humbly, and I say I'm very proud to be for plagiarism from the Pope. That's fine. Moving on. Liturgies. So some people have been quite amazing developing different liturgies, so services on the theme of the environment. And that is obviously something that is always very pleasant when it's shared. And that's fun in the Green Churches Network because some churches partner up and then they share those liturgies. There's even an environmental Stations of the Cross that was done in one of the Atlantic provinces. And also a bunch of activities. So if we're wondering, like, how do we bring spirituality of creation, not just in the message on Sunday from the pastor, or not just in faith education for children, but what kind of other activities can we do? Well, you can go check that out on the website. There are a few examples. So I'm moving now onto education. And okay, one last word I'd like to say about spirituality. As soon as people understand their connection to God's creation, the habits and the everyday actions change. Okay, so that's what's really interesting. We like to say that, okay, in our church, in our sacred space, we want to change our lighting, and we want to stop printing, and all these environmental actions. They're all really good. But when people have a change of heart, when they understand that this is part of our Christian tradition, this right relationship with the earth, well, then the actions follow, and there's huge motivation. So it's really an investment to spend some time on that. Also, another question, does the Bible talk about does it say you should take care of the environment? No, but it presents many times that God is creator, and also lots of examples of right relationships. It shows this relationship with the environment. And why? Well, because people were not so much in cities, but there's lots of examples of, the shepherds and all the rural context. These are people who were close to nature and who were asking themselves existential questions on what should this relationship be like. So voila. The Bible talks about a right relationship with the environment, not necessarily protect it, because it was not always under attack like it is today. Education. Here are just a few tricks to do environmental education in the church. The first one, really simple, really fun, green tips. We have 100 green tips on the website. So if you click on education and then green tips, you can go per month, and they're all written in a Canadian context. And you can copy, paste them in your church bulletin. You could put it on a screen. If that's the case, you could put it in emails, newsletters from your church. So these green tips always come with a little passage from the Bible and a little description of things we can do every day. And with 100, there are actually 8 per month. So you can use 4 during a month if it's once a week. And then the year after, you can go get the other ones. And so you can do a cycle of 2 full years of green tips. Then campaigns, just not every environmental campaign can necessarily be important in the church, but some are quite inspiring. I remember Oxfam doing one saying, well, rather than giving physical gifts, you can give a gift to someone, give it in their name. And there was the example of buying goats, actually, for populations in Africa. There's the 350 movement that had really fun campaigns of doing things and filming it, and quite great. You could invite a speaker. There are lots of themes, lots of Canadian speakers. And I mean, until recently, we always wanted to invite people physically at the church. Now there's even the virtual, which is possible. You should know that, lots of environmental groups are ready to come and speak for free. And there's even the Climate Reality project in Canada, which has a bank of speakers who can be invited for free. But there's not just climate. There's all kinds of topics that we can talk about to protect the environment. Movies are relatively easy to organize. Gather the whole faith community, then project the movie, buy some organic popcorn, and then exchange at the end and have a Christian discussion on it. Now, very important, there are two types of movies. Movies that raise awareness on environmental problems, and then movies that show the beauty of nature. Think of David Attenborough. There's the movie The Fox and the Child, the Disney Earth. Those movies are beautiful. So if we only show movies, let's say you want to show 4 per year. If you only show movies that show the beauty of the earth, you don't have a sense of urgency to act. And if you only show the movies that show environmental problems, it becomes very heavy, and then you demobilize people. So it takes this balance between the two. When it's so beautiful, you want it to be protected, but then you see that it's being attacked in a certain way, so you want to protect it. And there are also activities ready on the website, things you can do to raise awareness. I shall continue now with environmental action. This is a fun one. And as I show them, here's what I propose. In your mind or on your pad of paper while you're taking notes, make 3 columns. I'm saying this because usually when I would present this, people would already consider putting it in 2 boxes. One would be, this is possible, I'd like to do this action more in our church, or it's not possible. I'd like you to open up a box in the middle that would say, this is possible, or it's not, but there's also, this is not possible right now, but maybe in a few years it would be. Okay, always nuance. We have to get out of this binary thinking. So let's jump. First one, there's an energy workbook for religious buildings, investigating how much energy we use, how many resources we use. So kind of looking at the environmental footprint of the building itself. And it was made by Kairos. It's an amazing document. We answer a bunch of questions, make an assessment, and at the end, there's a bunch of suggestions. And then 1 year later, we reevaluate the same way, make another assessment. And what I've noticed, and many churches have told me that they've done it this way, the results are from 10 to 50% savings. So 10 to 15% savings in energy for a church, that's hundreds, if not thousands of dollars, which we can put into ministry rather than putting them on a building. And then that's just the first year, and these are with simple steps. Then afterwards, we can move on to things that are more complex. But this is a very interesting tool. The Green Churches Network is actually working on a new workbook like this, because the Run from Kairos needs to be updated. And also, we think we would have some interesting approaches to add. Okay, so as for energy, some of the things that can be done, changing the lighting. When I started in 2005, 2006, I could only talk about CFLs. But now we even have LEDs, which use 1/10 of the energy and last so much longer. So that's useful, changing the lighting in the church. And also we can see the other one there, insulation. If the church is very old, probably it doesn't have proper insulation. So we can start thinking of maybe insulating better. We can think of grandiose projects, big projects. The one on the left are solar panels. I've seen fun churches that put a row of solar panels to make a cross, depending on the weight that is permitted on there. I was informed that there's this new technology because, well, you know, solar panels in Canada, it's kind of a challenge because of the snow in winter. So now there's a way to actually play with the angle of the solar panels. That way, when there's a snowstorm, the snow will just easily fall off. And then besides, the sun is lower on the horizon. So that's another reason why in winter they would be steeper and then flatter in the summer. The one on the right is geothermal. It's very hard to put that in a picture, but basically near the church, we drill holes and then pass pipes. Those pipes will go get in the winter, particularly the warmth of the earth, bring it back up, goes through a heat pump and then heats the church. And apparently, because it's such a huge volume, the church has to do a little bit of air conditioning in the summer to redistribute that heat. So poor parishioners who, you know, have to go in a church that's cooler in the summer because of that. Oh, so such a pity, eh? It's the best of both worlds. That's what I'm saying. There we go. The Green Churches Network tries to see which grants are available. And so there's Natural Resources Canada and other sources. So if ever a church asks, you know, what grants are available, we can answer through conversation on the phone or emails and then investigate that. And it is possible, they're hard to find, but it's possible to invite an expert on religious buildings to come and give a detailed report. Now, this is 5 to 10 years ago, it was 1,000. Today, we would have to expect 1,500 probably. But that person comes in, makes a bunch of measurements, and then draws out a report saying, these are the things you could do. And this is how much it's going to cost, and this is how much you would save. Saving money and obviously reducing our impact on God's creation. I think we follow the example of Jesus because we like to eat at church. We like to gather and eat. He did say, take all of the, take this and eat it, take this and drink. So many stories Jesus is eating and drinking with people. So I mean, it's our community mindset to just come and eat together. And COVID really stopped us from doing that. So we want to get back to that as soon as possible. And so whenever there's a community meal, something that's being shared, why not on a little panel highlight what is local, what is organic, what is fair trade? Also, this brings me to something else. I've had debates with churches who would tell me, oh, but you know, if we decided to go with fair trade coffee 100% of the time, that would be so costly. It would just cost too much. It would be twice the price. And so I would simply tell them, well, what if you would skip? Every other time would be fair trade, or 30% of the time. You don't have to do 100% right away. If ever it changes your budget too much, if ever it's a change of habit that's too much, you don't have to go the whole way. when you're an individual and you're totally convinced about something, great, go 100%. But in a community mindset, we have to also respect other people's speed. And if you're sharing with other people, well, the budget for the coffee that's being offered, well, yeah, go 50%, go 30%. And then with time, there might be better interest and it'll grow. Especially if we also, encouraging organic and local farmers. That's great news as well. The Green Churches Network, we had made this nice little poster and with a quote from the Bible, the worker deserves his wages, which is the basis for fair trade coffee. And it can be printed out and just put next to the coffee machine so people know what they get. Also, can we please get rid of the styrofoam? Thank you. Oh yeah. I remember a pastor saying once that socially it did not exist single-use items like styrofoam cups. I mean, that was invented, and it came about in the 70s, 80s. It was popularized after that. But people have been gathering in church since way before that. What did they do? Well, they would use cups and they would wash them afterwards. And what I've noticed is that when one person has, the conviction of, okay, I'm going to offer cups and I'll start doing the dishes afterwards. Well, that person's not alone. Other people notice and they say, okay, I'll come and do the dishes as well. I'll come. And that person can have just a spunky personality and say, hey, I'm going to start the dishes. Who wants to come? But there is a nice sense of community when we're doing the dishes afterwards, rather than just throwing everything out all the time. Reducing, especially paper. I think there's a transition there. I see more and more churches who have screens so people can lift their heads and read from the screen rather than reading from paper in front of them. Or hymnals are good too, because at least we're reusing those books. But just printing songs every week might not be the best option. This is funny, a little spot for recycling inside the church. And you can see batteries on the left, and then those little, I'm sorry, I forgot the word in English, those little thingies on aluminum cans and also on bread fasteners. So those can be recycled, and they actually, they're a pure substance. It's only aluminum and it's only one type of plastic. So they're worth more. And when they're sold, well, some have brought the initiative of giving the money to people who want wheelchairs, who need wheelchairs and don't necessarily have the money for them. So my church, this is a picture I took of my church, where there was this little section for recycling as soon as you came in. And a reporter from CBC came, and we're talking about, the actions being done. And when the reporter said that, she said, wow, I never saw that in a church. Is that like a new way of doing offerings when we come into a church? And I thought, that's not bad, actually. That's not the first intention, but it might be a bit of that too. And there was one parishioner actually who said that when they would bring those stuff, they would actually thank God for that resource. It became a moment of thanksgiving. So I thought that was nice. This is a funny poster we had made a few years ago because a church asked for it. It's from a psalm, God rules with energy forever, but an encouragement to recycle back. There. Speaking of recycling, reusing, I know many churches who have a thrift shop, secondhand clothes shop, or organize bazaars. Composting. In 2009, the first Catholic church who joined the Green Churches Network, because it started with the United Church in 2006, but then in 2009, it was opened ecumenically. The first Catholic church who joined started with composting. That was their first action. And it's because they invited people for oh my goodness, I forgot the word, une épluchette de blé d'Inde, the corn, that when people are, they eat the corn. There's a word for that. Someone can jump in and just tell me, please.
Corn roast. Corn cobs.
Shucking.
Corn boil.
A corn boil? That's the name of the event? People are invited to a corn boil?
Corn roast.
Husking.
Or corn roast, yeah.
Oh, corn roast too. Okay.
What's left over is husking.
Okay. So the yeah. So thank you for jumping in. So when you pull off these leaves, there was a huge hump of them, and one person, he was part of the church board. He thought, well, let's put it all in the same spot and let it compost. And what he did the year after, he put it into bags and he called it holy ground. And people were able to give a donation for them. And then they brought back that compost at their home. So it was raising a few funds for the church, and at the same time, rather than that going just into the city landfill, well then we were making compost at the church. It's quite original. For transportation, encouraging parishioners when it's possible, churchgoers to come to church by bike or by bus. I've heard some churches who negotiated with the bus public transit company in the city to say, well, our service is at this time. Could you please bring a bus that passes 5 minutes before, and adjusting the times? And it was amazing. It was possible. For the bikes, there's a green church in Kelowna. What they did, they installed one bike rack, and the next Sunday it was full, and a few other bikes were like laying around. They had to bring them into church. A few weeks later, they decided to add a second bike rack. That was full. And a third and a fourth. Finally, they went to 4 bike racks. So the famous expression, build it and they will come. So these bike racks have been very useful. They just discovered that, well, it's Kelowna. They don't have as much snow. But still, lots of people wanted to go to church by bike. What's our relation to water? St. Francis of Assisi said sister water. So when we use cleaning products, they go down the drain and that will wind up in the river. So as Christians, what's our relationship to the water? What cleaning products are we going to use? And it's just interesting to know that it's very possible to make our own cleaning products with that costs much less and will not have an impact on the environment afterwards. And this is a cute one, grounds maintenance. So bottom left, a community garden. Knowing we're already a community, to see a community garden is not only really fun and good for the environment, but it also sends a very powerful message in the neighborhood. This is visual good news we are sending to the population. When non-church goers pass by the church and see there's a community garden, they see people in action, talking to each other in the community, and they see life growing. So that's been a real hit. Then some people, I know one church who replaced their parking lot with simply gravel, or there was one that has these, anyway, it's a green pavement. You just let it go green with time because the weeds will just go naturally, but then we can park there. And also when the rain goes down, it goes through there and goes into the underground water table. There was a church in New Brunswick one Sunday I went to, and they had birdhouses outside, about 10 birdhouses between the parking lot and the entrance of the church. And so I could hear all of these birds singing the glory of God. And then I came into the church, and then it was even more inspiring to come and worship. So just a few words in closing. I've told you everything about the 2 main objectives for the Green Churches Network. It's to raise awareness and also to develop a spirituality of creation, rediscover that part of our tradition, and also to reduce our environmental impact. But some of the fruit have been unexpected. And here's just three. There's been nice positive media coverage for the church. And I know it's not as bad where you are, but I can tell you in Quebec, having positive media coverage for the church is almost impossible. It's very, very hard. It's very secular here. And so the Green Churches Network has given that opportunity. They just send a press release saying, hey, we have a community garden, or hey, we're doing this event. And then the media comes and writes nice articles that are not even cynical. It's really good news we're sharing. The second, ecumenical dialogue, because a church that wants to do something will look at another church that has already done it, whatever the denomination. So it helps this dialogue. And finally, youth involvement. We always think that we'll invite the youth by doing youth activities. Well, opening a green team in a church is a great way to get the youth involved. They might not want to be in the choir. They might not want to go for those weekends, but they might want to be part of a green team. This is the toll-free number, the email if you'd like more information. And now it opens up into a discussion.
So Norma, you want us to ask questions at this point?
Yes.
Make a comment? Okay.
Yes. How many are we? We're 49.
Yeah.
Should we make a certain number of breakout rooms? Maybe. That way some reactions can come in those rooms and you can talk about what has been done in your church and share that good news of some things that have worked and how has it been inspiring for you?
We could do that. I know that there may be some folks that have to leave. We can do some breakout time and then come back. And I just want to know in advance, there may be a few people who have very particular questions they want to ask.
Yeah,
you.
let's go with that.
Okay. You want to do that way?
Yeah,
All
good
right.
idea.
Okay. So because I do know that there are folks here who are, this is a particular passion. So are there questions or comments that people want to make? You can put it in the chat or you can raise your hand and I'll look for the chat. Norma will watch for hands.
Okay. Oh, which reminds me, I'll turn this off.
Norma, in the chat, there was a request for the phone number again.
Oh, okay.
If you get, I'll type it into the chat if you just read it out loud.
Oh, I got it.
Okay.
1-844-940-6464. And I didn't take the right keyboard. I'll do it again. 490-646. There, it's in the chat.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Are there comments or questions that people have or initiatives they want to share? One of the questions in the chat was, where do you get to recycle? And you may not know this in this province, but someone else might be. Where do you get to, what do you do with the tabs, the pop can tabs and the aluminum tabs and the plastic things?
Right. My wife was in charge of the green team back then, and she was just wondering, she thought it was such a great idea. So she simply typed on Google, recycling pop tabs, charity, and the region. And then there was one individual in his own initiative, and we would bring the bags there to that person, and that person had already given in the past years 40 wheelchairs, thanks to those donations that came from schools mostly, but now the churches were starting to give them as well.
Great.
So it was a Google search.
All right, I think we can Google. Laura asked, does the Green Churches Network have community level chapters, or is it all individual churches?
Oh, that's a great question. I would love to have chapters. We haven't gotten to that point yet. So the individual churches sign up, they register directly, but then there are local or regional initiatives that appear thanks to the existence of the network. For now, there are 95 churches. I can easily imagine that when we get to 200, the chapters will like sprout by themselves, and then we'll have regions in Canada with a better coordination.
Someone's noted that bringing excess garden and orchard produce to the church on Sunday so that people could pick it up, or perhaps take it to a food bank as well, or the food sustainability fridges and things as well.
Right.
Alan has his hand up, I see.
Love that comment.
Well,
thank you, Angeline.
Rosetown, Saskatchewan.
Hi.
I knew somebody years ago, 20 years ago. They collected the pull tabs off cans because they were stainless steel, turned them in, and they made wheelchairs.
Mm-hmm.
But they've stopped making pull tabs out of stainless steel. So I wonder if that affects it, because he stopped collecting them.
Oh,
We still collect them. When
yeah,
the Order of the Eastern Star collects them in Saskatchewan, and we give them, and they go towards wheelchairs.
Are they a certain type of metal?
No, they're aluminum.
Aluminum. Okay.
yeah. And the way it was explained to me many years ago is that by taking just the tabs, we have only one material. It's not mixed up with other stuff, and it's generally very clean. So that's why it has such a high value. So it's actually that money coming in by selling that recycled material that then can be turned to buying a wheelchair. It wasn't melted and then shaped into something else, although it could, but it was more the funding related to it.
There's another question in the chat. Do you have a connection with the Greening Sacred Spaces Network and the Faith in Common Good? Do you have that organizational, personal connection?
Right. Yeah. We're good friends. Since its foundation, since it started in 2006, the Green Churches Network has been good friends with lots of environmental groups. Here in Quebec, there's Equiterre, there's the David Suzuki Foundation, there's Sierra Club, and I could go on. Greenpeace. and the relationship was so good that you remember a few years ago, there was this huge march in Montreal. Particularly, there were 500,000 people, and a few years before that, it was 300,000 people who walked in Montreal for the environment. Well, both those times, the environmental groups invited the Green Churches Network to be part of it, and would invite the churches to ring the bells, for example, or that some of the churches might house some people coming in just for the bathroom or for something else. So there's been this great collaboration. Now, Green Churches Network started in the United Church in 2006 and then spread geographically. And the intention was really to help promote ecumenism, help promote dialogue between the churches. Greening Sacred Spaces started in a totally different context. They were quite luckier than we are because they got grants from the Ontario government, which really helped them go. And the grants were for any sacred space, any religion who wanted to do things and, related to water, related to climate, reducing energy. And so their approach was interfaith, and they were really into action. As for the Green Churches Network, the approach was ecumenical, and at first we had to convince people that this was actually something Christians had to do. So we concentrated on the education and the spirituality more for all Christians, permitting lots of dialogue. So we just have a different history, but obviously it's happened on occasion that we've participated together in some events, and keep on that great relationship.
Thank you. I don't think there are any other comments, and no hands are up. So, Teresa, and then I think we might move to gathering things together in prayer and announcements. Teresa.
I have a question about the tree behind you. What kind is that tree, and what's your relationship to it?
It was a Christmas gift from me to me, and it's just I thought it really looked nice. I did not take the picture, and I'm not quite sure which type of tree it is, but thank you for saying that. Although beyond that tree is the rest of my property. I live in the suburbs of Montreal, so I have a few square feet in the back. I have a few trees, and I've tapped my trees for maple water. They're not even sugar maples. There are other types of maples, but still I tap them, and then I'm boiling some maple water right now and making some maple syrup. I have 4 chickens in the back. I have lots of spruce trees, so I make my own spruce beer, which has no alcohol. And we have 2 oak trees, and this summer we're going to try that for the first time. We're going to harvest the
acorns.
The nuts,
yeah,
the acorns. Thank you. I'm going to harvest the acorns and put them in the oven for a certain amount of time, and then make flour that will be added to cookies. So it's just great to have this relationship of how abundant everything is around. It really helps for Thanksgiving, and we can only save the environment if we're in relationship. We can only love God's creation if we know all the abundance that God is offering to us.
Thank you. And someone said, Angeline, pick the spruce tips in the spring and make spruce tip jelly.
I shall try that. Thank you.
It's lemony.
It tastes lemony. Thank you.
So a number of people have said through the chat, Norma, how much they appreciate what you've said, and that you've got people, well, maybe not the sap in the tree, but our mental sap running with ideas about things that we might do, or inspired to take it back to our communities. So thank you very, very much for being with us today. We're going to draw to a close. And if you would, if you would just stay on for a minute or two after, in case there's someone who's trying to make a different kind of connection or ask a particular question, that'd be very much appreciated. So for the announcements for today, this is the second of our webinar series, and it is recorded, live streamed, and recorded. It's posted on the YouTube channel of the Archdiocese of Regina, and also on the Diocese of Coppell, although not last week's, because I forgot my password, people, and I have to redo it. So that's one of the things that happens, but it will be there. It is on the diocesan website. So that's so you can share the word. We know that people go afterwards, and it allows you to let other people know, and they can catch some of your enthusiasm and learning by joining with you. Next week, our topic is sharing sacred spaces, facilities, and ministries, and with the Reverend Dr. Sandra Beardsall, United Church minister and academic, whose area of research brings together historical, pastoral, and ecumenical concerns in the service of congregational ministry on the prairies and points west. Sandra's with us today, but she'll be with us as our speaker next week, and you spread the word about that as well. Christine, if you would draw us to close in prayer.
Of course. Let us pray. God of beginnings and endings, we bring our session to a close, ever more mindful of our responsibility to care for your creation. We thank Normand. Nous remercions Normand pour sa sagesse et sa perspicacité, for his wisdom and insights. May we join with others, including the Pope, in acknowledging his contribution to this critical ministry. Let us take what we have learned and deepen our relationship with you, who is present in both nature and in our hearts. Send us into the wilds as they exist in our lives, even if it's just our backyards. Understand that we are connected to and part of creation, not its masters. Learn what we are and could be doing to respect all elements of your gift of creation, the air, water, and earth, the plants, and all the blessed creatures who share creation with us, and to share our learnings with our siblings, and to find the courage to live out our values in our homes, our churches, our communities, and our world. Grant us humility that we may steward rather than exploit, nurture rather than neglect, and that we may recognize the divine in all we encounter. Send us safely into the world to love and serve all of creation. Nous le demandons au nom du Seigneur Jésus-Christ. We ask this in the name of our Lord, Jesus Christ. Amen.